may wish to watch it afterwards. So thanks again and good morning. My name is Alberto Olivas. I'm the director of the Congressman Ed Pastor Center for Politics and Public Service at ASU. And those of you that knew the congressman would not be surprised at all that we're doing these events, these diversifying political engagement events. Those that were familiar with him knew that his legacy was one of bringing people to the table. He had a great concern as a policymaker for whose voices were missing when decisions were being made that affected us in the community. And he was well known for bringing, especially young people, and especially young people of color, encouraging them to get involved and to speak up and have a voice, to go beyond just voting, but find other ways to get involved in advocacy. So the center at ASU was created through a gift made by the now late congressman before he passed, because he thought it was important for students to have a place where they could learn the practical skills for advocacy, for civic and political engagement. And that's what we do at the Pastor Center. This event series, Diversifying Political Engagement, really came out of my own experiences traveling around the country and feeling like I had to explain Arizona to the rest of the country, where I would go places, conferences and workshops, and people would basically say, is everyone insane in Arizona? I have to say, no, our state is a great state. The people here are by and large intelligent and compassionate and moderate and reasonable. It's just that our political outcomes don't represent most of the people that live here. So it really got me wondering, like, why is that? And so we started this series to really critically examine for different communities. And of course, today's focus is on the Black community in Arizona. What are the barriers and obstacles to being fully and adequately represented politically and civically in our state? And once we can identify those, what are the solutions? What are the strategies we can come up with to help address those and meet the need wherever things aren't happening? What needs to be happening so that in the case of today's discussion, Arizona's Black community is as fully well represented politically and civically as it deserves to be, as it ought to be. And so many thanks to Tiffany Thornhill for putting together a really amazing panel. I'm so excited for this discussion to look critically and unflinchingly at what is the state of political engagement for the Black community in Arizona. And we will also be engaging you, the attendees. You'll have an opportunity to pose questions for our panelists to respond to as well. But that's our goal here today, is just to have some honest, frank conversation about political and civic engagement of the Black community in Arizona, what's going well, what's challenging, what needs to be made different, and who needs to be at that table to make those changes happen. So I'm excited to hear and learn from you all, and thanks very much to our wonderful panelists for joining us in this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alberto. And we still have one more panelist who's trying to get in. So Tanya, I don't know how you did it, but if we can get Bishop, if we can share what you did with Bishop Holt so that he can get in as well. He's still trying to get in also. But we'll just keep moving forward, and hopefully Bishop will be able to join us very soon. So yes, welcome to the webinar. I want to normalize technical difficulties as we go in technology land. So thank you, Alberto, for the warm welcome. And yes, this event is something that is near and dear to me as well. I think it's important that we have this conversation and we can share not only the struggles, but also the triumphs that our community faces as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read us a little passage from Alice Walker before we get started here. Let me find it. I was organized before everything started going crazy. All right. It is called We Alone by Alice Walker. We alone can devalue gold by not caring if it falls or rises in the marketplace. Wherever there is gold, there is a chain, you know. And if your chain is gold, so much the worse for you. Feathers, shells, and C-shaped stones are all as rare. This could be our revolution, to love what is plentiful as much as what's scarce. I thought that was an important passage to share by Miss Alice Walker to just remind us that all that glitters is not gold, and everything that looks good isn't always good. And when we look to the things that we don't normally look to, that could be our solution. All right, so here we are. We'll go ahead and get started with our panelists who will introduce themselves. I will be your moderator today. My name is Tiffany Thornhill. I'm the program manager here in the Congressman Ed Pastor Center for Politics and Public Service. I also wear many hats in the community. I serve in various volunteer roles, and I'm also a mother, which I consider to be service to the community as well. So thank you everyone for being here. Welcome to this webinar. This is our first time that we are doing this series as a webinar. So thank you for being our guinea pig, and it is definitely going to be a great time. With that said, I will turn it over to our panelists so they can do their introductions. We'll start with Avery. I'll call you out.
Thank you, Tiffany. I want to thank the Pastor Center for putting this together. This is phenomenal. I'm Avery Zola. I'm the voter education manager for the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission. I work under the leadership of our executive director Tom Collins and our director of voter education Gina Roberts. I'm happy to be a part of this panel with incredible wisdom and experiences up here. So I look forward to learning today and also to provide some information to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery, for being here. Go ahead, Ms. Kiana.
Good morning. I am Kiana Maria Sears, and my works and life's passion is community civic engagement. I actually serve on the Mesa Governing Board, so to most Mesa School Board, as well as the East Valley NAACP, and my full-time for a paid job. I work for Arizona State University with outreach, developing programs for 9th through 12th graders. So outreach and service is the cornerstone, and I'm a proud double. So I graduated from the Watts College with a master's in public administration.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead with Tanya.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this event. This morning, my name is Tanya Hamilton. I am Cabinet Executive Officer and Tribal Liaison with the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. I've served in this office for 17 years, with the state of Arizona for 29. I am a native of Arizona, born at Luke Air Force Base, raised in the West Valley, a graduate of Trevor Brown High School, go West Valley, and very happy to be here to share information around civic engagement. Proud member of the Arizona West Valley chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, a mother of two. And again, thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you, Tanya. Bishop, do you want to go ahead and do your introduction? Thank you for all of the struggles it took for you to get here. We're so grateful that you made it.
Yeah, it was. You're right. It was a struggle. Must be a West Valley thing. Anyway, my name is Bishop Anthony Holt. I am the current. What am I? Oh, I am the state conference president of the NAACP. I'm also a pastor over several churches. I assist pastors with running their congregation. After COVID, it became really hard to keep doors open to some churches, so I helped smaller pastors get the funds necessary to keep their churches open. I also am a father, a husband, a father of 3 young ladies. One is in the military, serving us from the Navy, go Ra. And I am a proud Lions fan for anybody that cares to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bishop. We'll go with Ashley next.
All right. Thank you all for having me today. My name is Ashley Anderson, and I am one of the newly appointed commissioners for the Arizona Commission for African American Affairs. Additionally, I'm also the president of the Greater Phoenix Urban League Young Professionals. And by day, I also work at ASU, and I'm a Sun Devil, working in the Fulton Schools of Engineering in the Dean's Office in Human Resources. I'm super excited to have this discussion today, to be able to learn and glean from others, as well as share insight myself. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ashley, and congratulations on your new appointment. We are looking to you for great things. All right, and last but not least, Tracy.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the invite. My name is Tracy Lopes, and I am Deputy Chief of Staff Outreach and Engagement to Governor Katie Hobbs, where everything outward facing for her administration comes under my umbrella. The Southern Office, Northern Office, Constituent Engagement, Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility, as well as the Governor's Office of Tribal Relations, Arizona-Mexico Commission, and the Commission for African American Affairs. It's wonderful to be here to talk about these things with these wonderful, wonderful panelists, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of your introductions. I just want to back up just a little bit and tell us why we chose this day. So we chose this day, February 20th, because it is the World Day of Social Justice. This day was coined back in the early 2000s by the United Nations, and it really is a time for folks to come together, not only nationally, but internationally, and speak about what we can do to attain social justice for the world, and specifically our people. It falls under Black History Month, so I'm taking it as our World Day for Social Justice, and that is why we chose today, February 20th. So we do have a booklet that was created for this event. Periodically throughout the event, the link for it will be dropped in the chat. My staff will be dropping it out in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that, please be aware of that and click the link on it. It is a Google Doc. You can download it from Google as well, but it'll tell you some more information about the panelists, more about World Day for Social Justice, and some different links for continued learning. All right, so with that said, let's jump right into it to our questions. So first question we have is, how is the idea of political engagement viewed or received in the African American community?
I'll start it off.
Okay.
Why not? I would say, and just from my interactions with older populations, the African American community and younger, I think it's generational. So I think the older population, they kind of understand the significance and the history behind voting and the civil rights movement and things like that. So the older population is much more in tune with the importance of civic engagement in elections. And I think, and I'm generalizing here, the younger population, they kind of have, there's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of distrust and things like that. And a lot of that, I think, stems from not really being represented. You know, when I talk to a lot of young people, they'll say, well, there's no one looks like me that, you know, that is running for office. So, and I try to, you know, convey to them that there are people that look like us that are running for office. A lot of times they're local elections. And so I think that one of the ways that we can get around that is just to have these one-off conversations with young people to try to engage them and let them know the importance of the history and like why to do it. Because I was just having a conversation the other day. You can't just tell a young person, hey, it's important to vote. You know, it's good for our ancestors. That's not that. And they're like good and all, but you know, I got this stuff going on. You kind of have to connect the dots for them and tell them like why they need to be out there voting.
Yeah, and I would like to piggyback from Avery, being president of the Greater Phoenix Urban League of Professionals, I'm representing a demographic of 21 to 40-year-olds. And when you're in that demographic, you're focused on, like, I'm focused on my career, I'm focused on my family. And it's not necessarily that you don't want to engage civically, it's just that it may feel like it doesn't affect me personally. Yes, I may be dealing with high cost of childcare. Yes, I may be dealing with inflation, but I have personal needs that are more important than me engaging civically. with YP, we do try to make sure that we have programming that allows for the membership in the community to really take advantage of learning about what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, what should you be concerned about. And those things are attended, but not as attended as maybe some other events that we may have. And I think that is just, to Avery's point, just not as much of a concern because I have more apparent needs that I need to focus on in my life and, within my household.
And I'd like to piggyback off of that also, because when we talk about generational, we look at a lot of times when we hear the conversation about buyer's remorse. And we, a lot of times with the older generation, we say that, well, I'm not voting this cycle because I didn't get what I was promised the last time. And they don't realize a lot of times when you have that conversation, what we're doing is we're actually giving the opposition or whoever we're not voting for the vote. And it's kind of like that conversation is translates into our younger people, like Avery was saying. When we give them the conversation about voter engagement, voter rights, our ancestors, it's good. It sounds good on paper, but what is the meat of it? What is really coming out of it, and why is it so important? And so many times we hear the slogan, because we use a lot, is your vote, your voice. And they don't really understand your voice is so important, because if they didn't want us to stop, if the vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to suppress it. So a lot of times we're trying to get them to understand there is a key factor of why we need this engagement, why we need you to go out there and stomp the ground. And it's not about who you vote for. Yes, it is, but it's also that you do understand why it's important to vote. And that even goes with our older citizens or our seniors as well, because our elders, they know the importance of voting, but they also know that they're tired of hearing the same soup warmed over and over again.
I'm going to jump in here, and I'm going to kind of deviate a little bit, but I'm also going to touch on what the previous panelists have stated. I think as a community, we've done a poor job of educating our community on the fact that national elections is not the end all and be all. I don't think people really understand how important local and state elections are. And that's something I think that we need to work more on in educating our youth, our high school students, our college students, and even our more seasoned community members. Because I think that people have this idea that the presidential elections are the end all and be all, when it is the state and local politicians that are truly the ones that are making the decisions that are affecting our day-to-day lives. And then just even pivoting further than that, my idea of political engagement actually goes beyond elections and voting. It goes to being involved in social justice organizations. It goes into looking at cities, counties, towns, and state boards and commissions and being members and getting involved on that. The governor's office, we have 247 boards and commissions. By and far, most of them are not fully staffed, and I can guarantee that most of them, save the ones that probably come under Director Hamilton's purview, don't have people that look like us on them. And so this is another part of the education piece that we need to get out there, that there's more to political engagement that makes a difference to our community, that it makes a difference to the African-American way of life. Because again, there are decisions that are being made for our community that we don't even know that we have an opportunity to have a voice in. And so we need to make sure that we're communicating that to everyone, which, by the way, if anyone is interested in serving on one of those 247 boards and commissions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, Tracy. So definitely piggybacking on a lot what Deputy Chief of Staff Lopes has touched on in reference to local involvement. I think as the questions asked, the idea of political engagement, there's definitely room for growth, continuous growth and education around all 15 counties within the state and all levels and age groups. But I will look at the bright side of where we are today, and that is 3 legislators in our House. Currently, we have a couple of mayors, vice mayors, city council women across the state, Avondale, Phoenix, Chandler. So we are definitely moving and grooving in the right direction. But I think the point of really heightening the the acknowledgement and education that those folks are out there, and to give them that support, and to look at these next elections that are coming up and where can you fit in. With boards and commission, as Deputy Chief of Staff Lopes just mentioned, we have actively, with the 9 commissions that my office oversee, we have actively recruited and outreach to all Arizonans. Yes, definitely, but definitely making sure we have the youth vote, the youth voice at the table, and definitely look into make sure that the demographics that are at that table look like us, look like me. So definitely on our way, and I see the positive and the upsweep of where we're headed.
Thank you, everybody, for those comments. I just want to kind of, in listening to something that Ashley said when she said she works with, or Commissioner Anderson said when she works with, people 19 to 40. And when we have these events around civic and political engagement, they just don't show up because they have other responsibilities, and that there's other things in their life that keep them away from those types of events. So the question is, how do we get the message across that being a part of these things is also a part of everyday living and should be a part of, in my opinion, at least, that civic engagement is a part of everyday life. It's a part of our familial responsibilities, because these, especially locally, these elections and these engagement opportunities are really impacting us as a family, our day-to-day life. So what do you think can be done to engage those people who just don't have the time, or don't make the time for it, or see the value in making the time for these types of experiences?
I believe that it's we all are responsible for being public awareness campaigners. And I believe some of us, it comes out of the passion of for learning. Some of us, it comes out of passion of getting to be 40 plus and realizing there's so much more I didn't know at 2021, 20, and then looking at my 30s and different opportunities. So I believe in what we know. We explain it, and we explain it in a way that it's everyday conversation, just like as the same kind of way we talk about sports teams and all the other things that we talk about in our community. We talk about pocketbook issues, because one of the things that we hear is like, I'm just, working a job and a half, or I'm working 2 jobs and I'm doing all these things, and relate that to there's this policy that's causing you to have to work these 2 jobs. We need more people who look at affordability. When we look at places like the Arizona Corporation Commission, where like every day when you turn on your light bill, and when you turn on your lights, you should be thinking about your utilities and your light bill, and how this particular entity, the commission, is affecting your dollar every single day, and the amount that's coming out your pocket. I think it's really up to all of us that know the piece that we know to share it, and make politics not a dirty word, and make it not about politics in the dirt of, but more about the policies and the things that affect us. Because I do hear in our community and in all communities that I'm not into politics. And that's just a off-putting thing. But to say, well, let's not talk about politics. Let's talk about how government and public administrators affect your life every day.
Now, and I just wanted to jump in there and piggyback what Kiana said, that, yeah, we kind of, how I look at it, and I found the most success, it's kind of like the same principle behind canvassing. It's like you knock on someone's door, you talk to them, and they may not be warm to you at the first time, but the second time or the third time, they're going to warm up to you. And the youth, especially youth in our inner city, they're a little bit harder to reach because they need to see stuff. Like they need, like, you can't just talk to them. So I think that you just have to engage people one-on-one, and you have to follow up with them. If you have any access to a youth group or anything, just continuously engage with them, and eventually they'll get on and they'll start asking questions and show, because they are curious, they just don't know what questions to ask. So if we just keep engaging with them, I think that that's one of the ways that we can get the message across.
I also think
well,
that,
go ahead, Bishop. Nope.
I also think that we need to, like, with all the conversations that both the panelists just had, is another thing, is to dispel the myths, because there's so much misinformation out there. And what do you believe? So it's like when you say we're talking about getting that information out there and really letting them, like you say, it's not about the politics, it's about the business. And what is that business look like? Well, what does government look like? What does that policy look like? I know a lot of times we vote on bills. People will just read the very first line of the bill. The bill may be 13 pages long. Sometimes it takes that moment to sit down and really say, you know what, read the bill, scan it, and then go back and see, check out what you don't understand. Because the decision you make is based on that stuff that's hidden. And that's where the myths come in. Oh, they didn't say that. Oh, they said it, but you just didn't see it. So it's kind of just making sure that we get a rounded understanding of how we present information to our constituents.
All wonderful, strategies and suggestions of how we get the message out. I would just add to that is that we need to meet people where they are. Of course, social media, we stress youth, and, all the youth I know think that we're old because we're on Facebook, but wherever they are, wherever you can give that plug, the Instagram, the TikTok, utilizing social media for good, if you will. What you're doing today, you're making a recording of what we're going through. So if someone couldn't make it because they're in a meeting today or they're busy, they can always come back to the resources of the center and the page. So always driving folks to, the resource that happened, but they still have the opportunity to get it. Being involved in organizations. We're talking about the Urban League. We're talking about, sororities and fraternities and D9s and 100 Black men, 100 Black women. There's all these wonderful, your church, the nonprofits that are happening with the church. There's all these opportunities to see people where they are and take that moment, if you have that knowledge, to share it and hopefully spread it and reaching all 15 counties of Arizona, not just the great state of Maricopa and then onto Pima and Pinal, where we know a lot of our population is, but whenever you're able to touch someone, to share that knowledge. So like I said, meet people where they are.
And one last thing I want to throw in here too is also showing the big picture, right? Sometimes it's like, well, why should I get involved? Like, this doesn't really affect me. It's at a much greater level than me. But showing the effect, and are you, are you paying this additional tax? This tax came from X, like showing like the whole cycle of how we got to how something was initiated to how it's impacting our lives now, and making that big picture for people sometimes helps them understand the importance, and then saying, hey, well, you could have impacted this by contacting your congressman, contacting your representative for your district, etc. So showing how people have made a difference. So many people contacted this representative, and as a result, this was the change. So showing what is that big picture impact and what has happened in the past, and how can we continue to do that going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. CO Hamilton, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to add one more point as far as getting the message out. It's having listening sessions. A lot of different activities that are happening within my office as well is going out amongst the community and making sure that you have listening sessions. Let's listen and see what suggestions that the community have for us, especially those of us who are in a leadership role, and we're able to, move volunteers and staff and bring agenda items to commissions to definitely, engage in listening sessions.
That was a great addition. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to jump around in our agenda of questions here just to kind of field the conversation. So here is a question. How is the pushback on the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs affecting social and civic engagement in our community?
If I may, I'll be the first one to jump in on this one. I think what it is it's creating fear within the community. People, especially educators, people who work for government entities, they're afraid to talk about anything. And I think that how the rhetoric and critical race or diversity, equity, and inclusion are being defined now is kind of anti-facts. We're being asked to erase actual historical facts. And what it's causing is it's fear of discussion, it's fear of talking about anything that does not fit this idea of what the status quo is pushing. It's doing what it's intended to do. It's trying to stop diversity and make this kind of cookie cutter Stepford wives type of mentality. And we need to push back from that. I spoke yesterday with the Links youth group yesterday, and that was one of the questions that they had. Like, how do we fight that? And we fight it, one, by knowing the rules, the laws, and the facts better than anyone else. And so when they're telling these lies and they're telling us that we can't talk about diversity or equity, that we're able to come back with why this is our right, this is our constitutional right. One hand they want to talk about free speech, but you're trying to deny my right to a free speech. So we have to be able to come back with them with factual representation and not being afraid to speak up.
And that's interesting. That's like, with the organization that we run, like me and Kiana are always fighting this conversation when it comes to the fight back. You have to be able to, one, know your business better than your enemy. And when your enemy knows more about you than you know about you, you already lost the fight. And that's the other thing. We have to know what we're talking about when we walk into these arenas, because the minute you mess up or say something amiss, they're going to eat you alive. So you have to make sure that when we talk about priorities and DEI, we have to be on top of that, and then not be afraid to say what we need to say. Those golden handcuffs, a lot of us are pinned to. We know we have to pay our bills and we know we have to eat and live. However, when does that stop? Or when does it get to the place where pushing the envelope a little harder is uncomfortable because of my bread and butter, but at the same time, my voice and my freedom is at stake? Because as long as you keep me handcuffed, you got me in a bondage. But as soon as I break those handcuffs, now the sky's the limit. So it's kind of like you say, it's promoting fear, it's promoting, am I going to be homeless, or I'm not going to be able to feed my family if I speak up? But at the same time, we need to understand that as long as we know our information better than the person that's trying to tell us our information, we may not have to go to the place where we have to damage our reputation in our workspaces or in our other spaces that we live in.
I want to say to Bishop's and to Tracy's comments is centering our Blackness and in this and we've been all of our lives in an anti-Black space and environment. This hasn't started, this year, or even this decade. This is the state of being in our Blackness. But when I talk about centering it, what the youth and the young people I see are doing for us with the book bans, there's more titles on the banned books being sold than ever, right? So we're seeing the skyrocketing. And I think as a community, we support and continue to support the selling of those books. Like I know the Marva Medgar Evers' wife, Marva, there's the book coming out regarding her life, and she's still alive and being heroic, but we continue to support that. Like this Sunday, the heavenly birthday of Toni Morrison, right? Who was unapologetically and when Black, when it comes to featuring our story and our humanity in her stories. So I believe a lot of times we get to a point where we talk about diversity and inclusion, but we speak on history and we speak on it from the lens of, oh, let's talk about this Nobel Peace Prize winner, Toni Morrison. This is undeniable where we exist in all American history. And then on the side that gets very uncomfortable, and we talk about civic engagement, we say, Ida B. Wells, what was she actually working on? Anti-lynching? Okay, this is how civic engagement happens. What's bothering you and what's destroying our community, and how is this pushback from DEI and inclusion affecting us? We actually say, tell me what your pain point is, and then that's how we fight. We know one of the ways women, when they decide to get involved and run for office, is most of the time it's with a cause. It's a cause of justice and a call to justice, and then that's where we are. So that's kind of the difference in the sexes and how we show up. But for the Black community as a whole, it's fighting for justice, but always relating back to why are we here, why we do what we do, and help people see how this justice fight is personal, and how we actually go from that personal cause and drive out. Then that's always what I think about when I look at the future generations and the leaders who are leading now, who are youthful people, because they're leading right now. It's always leading with a cause.
And I just wanted to add to that. There's, as far as like the critical race theory in schools, I'm from Arizona, and I grew up in the school system, and I wasn't empowered by the school system to learn my history. Like, that's not where I learned my history from, was the school system. And I really think that as parents and mentors and elders in our Black community, we have to be recommending books. We have to be, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but we got to tell them to read certain books. We got to tell them to like watch certain documentaries, because, and I tell my kids this all the time, they're not teaching you about your history at school. They're just not. They're not teaching about a lot of history at school. They're, so it's one kind of track that they're on. And I always tell my kids, if you want a high power from someone, put it in the book. So that's where it is. And I'm hoping that maybe planting that seed will encourage them to empower themselves, because me personally, that's how I felt empowered when I was a teenager. And I go to school and I'm not being taught my history. So I go to the library at the school and there's books in there. I grab those books and I learn more. Or I go to the public library and I learn more. And I mean, that kind of puts some of the onus back on ourselves. But what do you do when you're in a system that isn't necessarily empowering you? So we have to take it on ourselves as a community to empower each other and our children.
And if I may piggyback on that real quick, Avery, that's the other thing when I talk about dispel the myths. Critical race theory was a hit to our community to try to get us excited. We know critical race theory in most places, and I think Arizona is no different. That is a college course. It is not even taught in middle school and high school. It has never been taught in high school and middle school. I'm 60 years old, and I was a substitute teacher. I've never seen critical race theory ever taught in the school. But that mythological conversation of those individuals that come into our communities and try to race bait and cause problems to excite and to cause us to be fearful and all these other things, or to get a negative reaction out of us so they can say, see, that's how they are, when we know that's not how we are. Like Avery was saying, churches, our organizations, our young people, there are so many elders that sit in our midst that know the stories. They teach the story. They'd be more than happy to share. And knowledge is power. And if I can be a preacher for a moment, it says, my people perish for the lack of what? Knowledge. It's knowledge that we need in our communities that brings about the conversation that says, we're inclusive, but you look at our history, look at our knowledge, look at our wealth, look at our value. When you start showing somebody what their value is and you show them what their knowledge from their wealth is, it changes the dynamics of the groundbreaking. I don't understand how we do not get our young people to see, look where you came from. The politics side of part of it aside, the voting, yes, all of that great stuff, but just knowing our history and understanding that when we bring that knowledge to the forefront, not this public school system, not the libraries, not Miss Evers down the street who babysitted for 3-4 years when I was little, but my community surrounding me, because it says a village raises a child. Let's be that village. And that's where I think that we have gotten away from over the years, is being that village, because they've made us more busy. Conversations have got longer. Conversations have got more strict. I think we said it earlier. Social media has just come and blown up everything. And it's not like it used to be. We sit around the dinner table and we kick it. We don't do that anymore. Last time I had dinner with my family, I can't even remember. But it's needed. It's needed. That community, that sense of engagement, that kind of pours off into every aspect of what we're doing, with political, with civil, with everything else that we do. It's that community. It's that understanding. It is developing our own knowledge.
I think just that point from Bishop Holt, that's why organizations like Omega Youth League Academy, Kappa League, Delta Gyms and Academy. That's why those type of organizations I think are so important, because we are so busy, as Ashley said earlier, especially our younger generation, just trying to live, trying to make a dollar, trying to pay that ever increasing rate and rent and mortgage, and take our children here, there, and the other. That sense of a community that like our parents, our grandparents grew up when. We're on the streets, our neighbors see us doing something bad, and they have permission to address us. That's gone now. And so it's really important, I think, that we build up and make sure that our children are involved in those type of organizations, because they are teaching the things that are missing from the school system. And at first, schools only want to take 5 seconds about slavery. But these organizations and our elders, yeah, we were slaves. Some of us were slaves. Not all of us were slaves, but before we were slaves, we were kings and queens. And so that's what these organizations are teaching our children. And so I look at like the Native American community. I look at some of the African communities that come here. One of the best things I think about my job is I get to fellowship with these communities, in being the interim DEIA director. And I look at like the Burundi community and how they're having Saturday schools for their children, teaching their history, teaching their children where they come from so that they don't lose their identity in this Americanized capitalist society that we live in. And we need to get back to that. And I feel like the organizations that are doing that, the NAACP Youth Advisory Council, the D9 youth groups, the Links, the Jack and Jills, those are the ones that are doing that. And we need to lean on them and we need to support them, because those are the ones that are really getting out there and making sure that our children are educated to know that we were kings and queens way before we came here on ships.
I'll jump in, loving this conversation, agreeing with everything that my fellow panelists are saying. Definitely come from born and raised here in Arizona in the West Valley. And definitely my first two teachers of any history were Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton. Those were my two educators, continue to be my educators. And the beauty of having my parents here with us today, continuing to be here today, 56 years, celebrating their anniversary over the weekend, Sunday dinner at their house. You don't miss no Hamilton Sunday dinners, right? And when you come to the dinner table, my sister at Maryville High School watching now will attest, cell phones are off the table. I mean, we are back in the 70s, 80s. So therefore, my children, my two adults, they've received the same upbringing. But for those families that we're able to engage with at the high schools, for those families that we're able to engage with in our different organizations that we belong to, we have to surround them. We have to be that wraparound service for everybody, to let them know, our history is rich, as been explained. When I went to the University of Arizona for a couple of years, African American studies, that was key, and learning a lot, as we say, that's in the books. And then too, with these organizations, we're able to support organizations and that do HBCU tours. Those tours are important. A lot of people don't know what we're talking about when we say D9. Those are the fraternity and sorority organizations that were established at HBCUs. Being able to support those organizations that are able to take those youth out to those tours, that's important. So I think we're all saying the same thing, is that we have to support, as leaders, as civic organizations, as parents, as community members, each other.
Wonderful responses to the questions. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you so much. For the next question, I'm going to take two of the questions and just bridge it into one. So the question is, what is your perception of the state of African American civic and political engagement in Arizona? And are there any continuing barriers or obstacles to that political engagement?
I'll start this one up. because I've been thinking about this a lot actually. To me, one of the biggest barriers in Arizona for Black civic engagement is our numbers, right? There's like 4 or 5% of us here, but it's not just that, is that we're spread out. So there's large portion of us in Yavapai and Maricopa, Pinal, but we're not all connected in a way. And I do want to say that the sororities and the fraternities, I don't think enough has been said about the positive impact and the role that you all play in filling the gaps in services as far as like election information and social services and civics. Like, I think more needs to be done to draw attention to these kind of programs, because I see them as successful. I've been to a few. I participated with one with Roy Tatum a few weeks ago, and it was, the kids got there, they got to see, Black educated men speak to them about issues that they're concerned about. And I think that has a super significant impact. But back to my original point, I think that if I had a magic wand to wave, like, let me do something positive for the Black Arizona community, I would like make a way for us to be united within all these counties. Because if we form a broad coalition, a bigger coalition, we'd be much more effective in getting policies passed for the inclusion and all that. But when we're in Maricopa, when we're in Yavapai, and we're over here, we can kind of be picked off one by one, so to speak, kind of like in the Scooby-Doo when they like, let's split up, gang. Like that never works out. So I think that if we could stick together more as a Black people in the state of Arizona, regardless of political ideology.
And I think that you hit the nail on the head with that one, because we've allowed the system to territorialize us and put one over the other and make one more important than the other, because it looks like, well, you guys are doing better work than they are. And that territorialism comes from years of that stressful slave mentality that came about with Willie Lynch mentalities. We have to get back to an understanding that we are one people, one village, one band, one sound. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, with our young people, when you bridge the gap, you have to be able to say, okay, why do you feel one way? And let me tell you why I feel something, and see where we can bridge that conversation. Young Black men should not be afraid to go talk to old Black men, and old Black men should not be afraid to talk to young Black men. We have to get that unity back, that unification back. That way we can become unified, and that diverse system that tries to separate us, it won't have the hold that it has right now. Because we all know the human nature is, if I make you better than me, an ounce of better than me, you know what that does? It takes us to another division. And it's sad to say, because even in our own organizations, the D9, NAACP, urban leagues that I've been a part of all my life, I have seen the separation come just based on someone saying, well, that branch does more than that branch, or that group does more than that group. But we're the same group, so why is it necessary to say who's better? Maybe that group needs to take a few points and say, hey, let's use some of that to build our neighborhood, because we know that we are spread out so much. So it's about bringing back that unification. And that barrier is that we've let that diverse seed come in and separate us based on who's better, who's smarter, who looks better, who's getting more attention. No, it is one band, one sound. But how do we? So I'm asking the question with an answer. How do we accumulate that relationship of one band, one sound when there's so many musicians on the field?
I want to add that.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, thank you, Kiana. I want to add that there's just not enough people. Like, you shouldn't be able to go to community events and organizations around civic and political engagement and see the same faces. Our population has grown so much, and I'm just referring to specifically the Black population, has grown so much that we shouldn't be seeing some of the same faces. We should be seeing so many more people in our community, regardless of age, regardless of generation, be more involved civically and politically. It's so much room at the table, right, for us to all make a difference. And I think that as we talked about some of the obstacles and barriers in our conversation today, but really just making sure that people understand the importance of it, and then just lend their time, talent, treasure to the efforts that are already happening. Don't go out and create something new. We already have a lot going on. Let's go ahead and just get more people involved. Kiana, you can go ahead.
I agree. And I think two things is going on. We do have the Native population and people who've been here before statehood. When I say that, Black and African American people, Black Americans. And then I would think there's a consciousness a lot of times for some people who come from other states. And we talked about the other state. Arizona is I see it as a reinvention state, right? You have some people escaping trauma zones from where they come from and all these things coming in. And I think it sometimes is kind of, it's up to people who are here and get, let's just say, acclimated to reach out to other people who've just moved here, because there is an acclimation that needs to happen to Arizona because it is so different. And I think in doing so, when we do that, we get, because it's easy when you come from somewhere else and you're in this foreign land to have this individualistic rather than the collective thing. Because I remember, if you go back several years, you didn't see Black people every day if you lived in certain neighborhoods. So I think that acclimation and reaching out and just letting people know, because like you said, there's this vast where we're on all these different pockets. And I do know that the Black Philanthropy Initiative is trying to work on something that we've all, and I think every Black organization in the Valley has tried to work on, from a green book to trying to get our business and organizations collective then together. We've all tried to work on this on one way or another, but realizing that maybe with AI, we're able to make this sophisticated, because there's so many people who are doing the work. And as Ashley spoke to, you have somebody who will land and plant and go, oh, they don't have this, and start doing that same thing over here in their little pocket, because they have no idea that on the same day they're doing an event, that same particular subject, let's just say Black females in STEM, is happening in 4 different pockets in the Valley. So I think it's a twofold thing that would help us be more, that we need something that's brilliant because it's so dynamic, with people coming and going here and being transplants and being acclimated to the place and the changing of Arizona. And we also need to support basically an engineered system to actually bring us together. Because, we've learned that if we do it in entertainment, it's hard to do in entertainment and education. Like I put Tremaine Jasper's entertainment thing, he's tried to include barbershops and he's tried to do education, but you can't do big segments all in one particular thing. So I think if we look at more of our civic organizations and make almost like a big think tank that works with AI and engineering, because it takes many manpower and hours to do that. So I think we reach those people and talk to those people who haven't quite acclimated, and help them get involved and help them come, because you actually do need some guidance. So it's each one reach one, back to Jesse Jackson and and Push and Rainbow Coalition. We need to employ some of those techniques that work in other places that doesn't have the sporadic Black people, and where there are hubs, those techniques still work here.
Thank you for those responses. As somebody who is a reinventor here in Arizona, who had to, come here to reinvent myself, it's interesting that, how siloed things are around here and how the information is so spread out. And, although you do want to get involved, it's like, where do you get involved? Because like you said, there's so many events that are happening on the same day, at the same time, with the same focus, with, and so I think that brings me to another question that I'm just going to take off the fly. How do you think that we as Black folks here in Arizona can manage all of those competing things that are competing for our interests and for our passion and for our time? What do you think is a strategy for folks to use to be able to still engage, but making the decision on where and how to engage in all of the various things?
I can kick that one off. I think it's just gonna start with where does your interest lie on the spectrum of civic and political engagement, right? Because there's so many different avenues that you can go down to serve with your time, your talent, your treasure. Where are you interested in? Because here's the thing, there's going to be a space and a place for you wherever you want to serve. So I think it just starts with where do you want to serve? Does that mean you want to be a poll worker? Does that mean you want to join the NAACP? Does that mean you want to join the Urban League? What have you? I mean, there's so many just different opportunities, especially regardless of age, regardless of generation. And I think if you start there, then that can kind of give you a pathway into finding out like where you are best going to be able to use your skills and your talents.
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, Bishop.
I think the other thing to add to that is that, like you said, with generation, is just to try to ease the understanding that one is no better than the other. We all work together to get to the same common cause. And the conversation is that I used to wonder why there were so many small churches in such a tight area. And then it came to me, it says, everybody wants to be the leader. Well, everybody can't be the leader. Somebody's got to follow. So yes, I'm the president of the state conference in NAACP. Oh boy. But if my president Sears in the East Valley is doing something, and I'm going to support her in that. I'm not going to go out and say, well, just because she's doing that over there, I'm going to go out and do the same event, but I'm going to do it at a bigger scale because I'm the president of the big dogs. No, I have to present myself to be able to follow as well as lead. And I think a lot of times we don't teach that. We teach how leaders, we're leaders. But a good leader knows how to follow.
That was a wonderful response to end off that question. Thank you for that. I think that's exactly what I was looking for. All right, we are running close to time here, so I'm gonna give us one more question, and then we'll move to the audience because I see a lot of questions that are getting dropped over there in the Q&A. So I'm gonna bridge two questions together here, and it's, what strategies or opportunities are there to address any barriers to civic and political engagement for the African American community? And who should be driving any of those strategies or initiatives? I know we've been talking a lot. We're almost done.
I'll set it off. Strategies, of course, I'm a voter education manager with Clean Elections, so I'm always going to be preaching about voter education and educating yourself and your friends and family. Some of the things that people like us or people that have families that they're the go-to person for civic engagement or election questions, there's always that one person in the family. I would say that person should be like a voting ambassador for the family and make sure the other family members are registered to vote, make sure they know when the dates and deadlines are. I also think that there needs to be a strong push, of course, for all of us to support African-American candidates. Like if you have an African-American candidate on your ballot, and you should be voting for him. Another thing is media representation. Like Black people, we need a marketing plan. We need like a big marketing plan. We need probably commercials and billboards. Like Black people are okay. You know what I'm saying? Like we do. I think the media representation and messaging is important. And who's responsible for that? And for media in particular, I think Black media. So our Black media giants in Arizona and nationally, they need to be supporting some of this civic engagement, talking some of the conversations that we've had here today. And aside from coalition building, which I think we kind of talked about, I'm going to say policy advocacy. And what I mean by that is if you watch some of the like hearings, the legislative hearings, city council hearings, you're not going to see too many of us in the audience. And that, that's for a variety of reasons. A lot of us are at work and things like that. But I sure would like to see some way to get Black and brown people in the seats at the legislature, at the city council, and at some of these hearings, because just being in the building can have an impact on some of the decisions, so those are the things that I would suggest.
One of the things I love is election parties. I started these very informal election parties, and they grew a little bit out of control. So my HOA started giving me some issues. But I tell you, when it comes to getting people together and meeting them where they are, very much like Tanya Hamilton was saying, meeting people where they are. And when we would have these meetings, it wasn't about all of, I didn't put on policy 444. I just talked about, okay, here's what we got going on. We got expulsion going on with children. This is how these things relate to this. We got some property tax issues going on here. This is how this is affecting our community. So who should be leading? Everyone who has true, factual, authentic knowledge and is informed, not the theories, not hypothesis. So that's everybody. So that's everybody who's here. There's people who are listening who they have this much about that topic. You may not be an expert on everything, but yeah, if you know, okay, I'm missing out learning about this, get a fact sheet from the legislature. Sometimes I just call somebody and say, okay, I need all of these different fact sheets and on this. Because Bishop, a lot of times I'm like, oh, this bill is, I can't read, 50,000 bills. Let me get a fact sheet and figure out and actually run with that. And then knowing that there are organizations that are out there doing the research, and get a hold to somebody very much like Citizens Clean Elections over there, our brother Avery. Like you said, we are the ambassadors for our family, for our tribe. So it goes back to that kinship. And, all the children I see, I don't care if they look like me, they're my kids. I've never walked through an ASU campus without saying hello and hi and how you doing to every Black kid I see, because that is the environment of Arizona. We have to reach out in those, I call it guerrilla fashions, to actually meet the people and our children at their need. And that's goes for the adults. So if you see somebody at work, you might just want to slip in one little thing. Oh, sis, this happening down there at the so-and-so? Yeah, we got to get involved. And then, write it on the back of your envelope. I've done all those different things, and we all can do those little tips because we know there's so much competing and so much stress and inequity in the lives. And that's the one thing I want to enter into this conversation is we have to take on just all the inequities. When we look at just the mortality rate in our area codes 85040 and 85042. You have to realize that we literally have Black women going in to have babies who are dying and not coming out. And so, and sometimes it's that wake up and that stress, and that people may not have time, but when they say, hey, do you know so-and-so actually died in the hospital having a baby? Well, that should not be. So I think that relatability and knowing that it's all of our responsibility.
And Avery, I think you mentioned two things that are on my notes here. One is Black media. I feel that one of the things that we really need to push our Black media to do is to combat this false rhetoric that mainstream media is putting out for ratings. There is so much misinformation out there on social media, mainstream media, that just looking at these sound bites, because I think our younger generation, they only have time for those little sound bites. There's no one that's checking them and saying that's a lie, that's false, this is what's really happening. And I feel like we need to push Black media to be that fact checker on mainstream media. And then I love the idea of you talking about, the family election ambassador. That carries on to making sure that our children, I have 2 teenagers, we need to be talking to our kids. We need to be talking to their friends about where they are now. What is their civic obligation when they are able to vote? Taking them to kitchens that are feeding the unsheltered. Taking them to oh gosh, I'm trying to think of different things. Taking them to things that are outside of their box. I think that a lot of our children are much better socially than our parents were, and even than we were. And I feel like somewhere along the lines, we've lost this idea that we need to make sure that we're taking care of each other. And so we need to make sure that we're talking to our kids about what their responsibility is as they're growing up and becoming an adult. And that includes educating them on researching. When they see something on social media, I'm constantly arguing with my children about things, these little sound bites they see in social media. I'm like, that's not true. Tell me where you can find the information for that. Look it up. I'm waiting. So we need to be having those conversations with them to get them thinking outside of the sound box that's being pushed on them. And that's another way that we become that election ambassador. And also, we need to think about the fact that a lot of these election laws that are being shoved down our throats that are prior to our governor being passed, they're disenfranchising our elderly. And that is one of the biggest election voter bases here in Arizona. And if they can't get to the polls and they're now not allowed to vote by mail, we need to make sure that we're getting them there. And so we need to reach out to, there's several Black-owned nursing and skilled nursing facilities here in Arizona. We need to make sure that we're going there. Are they registered to vote? Are they registered to get their mail-in ballot? Do they need a ride to the polls? Making sure that they're voting in the primary elections. So we need to reach out and reach back to the ones that came before us to make sure that they're being able to exercise their constitutional rights to vote as well.
I think, Tiffany, to your question, in reference to strategies and opportunities, definitely seeing the opportunity at the high school level. Throughout the state. You know, I have now the volunteer mayor of a high school with their Black Student Union, and some of the opportunities that are happening are voter registration. When it's family night, when it's freshman night, whatever activities that they're supporting on their campus, they're doing a voter registration drive. That might be one campus out of 20, but then if multiple school districts are actively doing that, we're starting right when those kids are turning 18, those seniors going into college at the university levels. Still voter registration for those kids that, are unaware of the things that are happening in the community in which they're attending school. The young adults, the Gen Zs, the millennium, that's a large voting constituency for the state of Arizona. Yes, of course, our seniors, but that whole gamut of eligible voters, we need to have opportunities in their locations, like I said, for listening sessions. Within the last year, within the last 2 years, a lot of organizations have done an excellent job on candidate forums. That's important. Bring those folks that are interested in your school board, those folks that are interested in your city council, bring those candidates to the table. Let's hear what they have to say. Let people make those decisions on their own. But definitely there are strategies out here, but as everyone is saying, we have to unite. We have to figure out a way to organize ourselves and, piggyback on a good idea and go ahead and be a worker because you're not the idea maker or the leader. It's okay. You have the same goal. The goal is to get folks registered, get folks informed, and hopefully see some shifts in some of this fear mongering as we're talking about is happening within our communities.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and bring those young people in your lives to the polls. I took my niece to vote for the first time. It was one of the most proudest moments of my life. Bring them to the polls.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, they can be poll workers starting at the age of 16 and make about $150 for the day. So that's another way to kind of get them engaged and involved before they're even eligible, is having them sign up to be a poll worker. And we definitely need more of the young folks as poll workers because, like Deputy Chief of Staff Lopes said, like our elderly folks are the ones who are typically working at the polls. And then if they don't have access to get there, who's actually working the polls? So that is a good one. Bishop Holt, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, you guys have probably put a good spin on that one, so I'm done.
Okay. All right. So we will move to our question and answer portion. I do see a lot of questions that are over there in the question and answer box. But first, today is February 20th. Today is the last day to register for the presidential preference, which is taking place in March. As we know, Arizona has a huge independent voter population. And so if you are a registered independent, you will not be able to participate in the presidential preference that is coming up in March. So if you would like today, you can re-register and declare a party so that you can participate. However, if you're not interested, that's okay. You'll be able to participate in August when the general primaries start happening here in Arizona because independents can participate in Arizona's primaries. However, if you do want to participate in the presidential preference, today is the last day for you to re-register or register for that election. My staff has been dropping links in the chat. We do have a turbo vote link we use here at ASU. You can click right on it and register virtually. So let's go ahead and get into these question and answers from the audience. There was one that I would like us to touch on, and it is, if we are not located in Arizona, what do you suggest we do to be active in our local communities, and where should we start?
So I'd like to hit that one first, if I could. I think a lot of times where we are is how we, everything has to be methodical and calculated. So we have to look at what organizations do we belong to, what organizations are the movers and shakers, the church. Once upon a time, the Black church was the place to go, and everybody came and assimilated out of that body. That's kind of changed over the years, and it does not have the same ferocity. But at the same token, there are still a lot of pastors that are engaged with the Urban League, the NAACP, other organizations, state government organizations such as the college and fraternities. So we kind of look at where would you go is, first of all, look at who's doing what, and are they really doing it and progressing in that, and then be a part of what that is, not coming to take over, not coming to throw everything that you know. It's good to bring knowledge, but sometimes it's good just to sit back, see what the group is doing, and then associate with them with that knowledge and say, hey, if we do this plus what you guys are doing, we might be able to cover more ground. So it's just about, first of all, getting engaged, getting out there, and then looking and understanding who's doing what, and just make sound decisions from that point.
I would say to that question, see if there, a lot of the organizations that we have talked about today are national organizations. So I would first also take a look to see if those national organizations do have chapters in your local city, or in your state that you can attach yourself to. Avery made a point earlier of going to being president, like city council meetings, school board meetings, legislature, things like that. Going to those things also, the people will be there, right? People will be there at those hearings and such, and you can connect with them then and network with them there. So that's just a couple of ways that you can also do it. And when you start to network within those different circles, you will then kind of have your tentacles spread into, oh, well, this organization is doing this and this organization is doing that. But that's just a couple of the different ways and areas to start.
Thank you for that. Did anyone else want to add to that question? No? Okay. Another one is, what can individuals do outside of simply voting to be more active? I mean, we've answered some of these throughout the talk as well, so go ahead and answer what portions you think are still relevant to answer. So it says, what can individuals do outside of simply voting to be more active around political engagement? What type of events are great to attend? And what type of volunteer work should someone seek to be active in and learn from? What's a first step you suggest after registering to vote? There's a lot of parts to that, so feel free to take whatever one you want to answer.
One tip that I would say is, aside from voting, is digital activism, which is, posting on social media. So we talked a lot about fact checking and events and things like that. One thing that we can do is, if there's an event that for the Black community, we can post that on our social media. If there's a candidate running for office that we support and we feel that others should be supporting him or that they need donations, we could post that on our social media. We could have real conversations on social media. And the best part about having a real conversation on social media is, if it gets out of hand, you can just walk away from the computer. So I think that our young Black community who are civic engaged are participating in this, but I think more is better. And I'm gonna say a quote that was I know it's Black History Month, but this is a Ralph Nader quote. And he says, when democracy is in trouble, the thing we need is more democracy. So I think that just pulling more people into the election process, pulling more people into civic engagement through volunteering, issue-based advocacy. You can join clubs like Young Democrats, Young Republicans Club. And lastly, you can run for office. You can run for office and actually have a seat at the table and represent Arizona.
I would say everything that Avery just said. So I guess I can say ditto. But I'll just add 2 things to that as far as involvement after registration, and that's attend school board meetings. Find out what's on the agenda. What is that board looking like? What's happening within that district? And then 2, attend public meetings, city council meetings. Those give you some information on what that particular city is addressing.
I would also
Agree.
say, sorry.
Okay, go
I would
ahead.
also say
Go ahead, Tracy.
get involved in your local precincts. I'm thinking in the last couple of years, how many elected officials that have been appointed, and the local precinct are the ones that put these people up to hold these positions. Just in the legislature itself in the last 2 years, I think we've appointed 14 legislators because people have had to resign for a number of reasons. Not all 14, they were 14 Republican and Democrats, but it's the local precinct people that that hold local elections to then put these names up in front of the Board of Supervisors. That is one of the most important and untapped areas of political engagement, I think, that people don't know about. There's no age requirement. There's no political party requirement other than the fact that you live in that precinct and have a voice that can be heard.
I like the Avis model, ownership. I think when we take ownership in what we do, it means more. So when I take ownership in my community, when I take ownership in those things that I'm doing, like you said, if I'm running as a precinct delegate, if I'm pushing that candidate up and I'm really standing behind that, when I'm getting other people to do the same, because they fit our community values, they commit our social ideas, then I take ownership for that. And it makes me feel better. And it shows me my dedication is more about doing it than it is just showing up, because it now becomes a part of me. So I always like to say, when we take ownership of what we have, then we start to really see the fruits of our labor.
Agree. And I was holding one of the questions was saying, what should we do right after registering to vote, before, after, during? The one thing I preach on every single day is knowing who represent you. So one of the first things I do is when I meet somebody, I talk to them about going to their county recorder's office. Just put in, if you can't find it, just simply put in, find out who my elected officials are. And then back to what Bishop Hope was saying, the ownership. Once you know who those elected people are who represent you, go, okay, I am responsible, and that person should be accountable to me and all the people who they serve. So actually rightfully seeing them as a servant that should be serving you. So literally look them up, and then I help people to understand. We understand busy, we understand all this prestige and calendar and all of that, but those who serve you should be accessible to you. And so you actually make yourself, and actually you don't have to be an elected official, you don't have to be any title to actually say, I gave this person my vote, even if I didn't vote for them, they represent me. So I'm going to call their office, I'm going to talk to their secretary, whomever, and find out when they have their town halls, when they're talking to us, or find out they're not talking to us. So then actually write in and let them know that I expect you to be talking to us. And that is the single thing that I think a lot of the community don't know, that, and there are many elected officials who welcome and want you to talk to us, but people don't know, because the people in the know will call and bother and bombard elected officials when we have a lot of people who have in our community have real concerns, who think, well, they have not understood that the person who's elected should be serving them, and they should actually voice what they feel to that representative that they have elected. So yes, look up at the county recorders, no matter where you are, who serves you, and Even if you haven't seen that person, be familiar with their face and who they are and contact their office.
And I just want to add to that, if you go to azcleanelections.gov and go to our voter dashboard, you put in your address, it'll pull up the people who represent you in your district for your city council, congressional district, and you can actually see, and we have pictures, you can see what they look like. One of the things I do when I go talk to young people is I tell them to pull up that list of who represents them and ask them, do they look like you? And I won't say anything further. I'll just ask them if they look like them, and then their mind kind of starts, turning and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, why not? So I think it's to your point, Kiana, I think it's very powerful to look up and see who's actually representing you in your congressional district, in your legislative district, and for your city.
And the point I'd like to make on top of that is do not go by name recognition. Know who serves you.
Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Okay, I have another question. The Clean Elections Commission link was dropped in the chat for everyone if you want to check that out. The question is, how do we stop or reverse legislation of book banning? Anybody got?
It's twofold. One, you have the legislation part of it happening that's down there at the Capitol. Then it goes back to what we talked about, school board. Your local school board could actually have a resolution that prohibits the banning of books. That is a real thing in real time. I sit on the school board and we actually have such a resolution. People don't like it, so they keep bringing books and say, did you know we found this book? And yes, I did know we found that book. And no matter what your preference is, it is as a local school board and a governing body. That's why it's important that those direct policies start with your actual school board when it comes in a school setting. But then you have the university, and then you have local libraries, and more than just a school board. But our kids, we know, a lot of times interact with what's going on at the school. The school's not responsible and should not take full ownership, because that's part of what we need to do. But actually being part of the community and asking your school board members, do you have a book ban? What's the policy? What are you doing at your school? Because a lot of people just take it for granted. Well, the books are banned and this is what's going on. No, that power is in the 5 or the 7 school board members that sit on a district's board.
And to that point, also, when you look at that legislative top, when we voted for a school superintendent, we had to look at what the values were. Once again, does it fit our community? Does it fit our children's needs? Does it fit our socioeconomic needs? When we do not vote, we get what we get, because that's giving the vote to the person that we did not want in there. So we have to look at the values of those folks that represent us. So when you talk about what can be done, as Kiana says, yes, it starts at the school board, because the schools have a boss, then the boss has a boss, and then so on and so forth. But what I always look at, and I think this is coming from my NAACP voice, so you just bear with me for 1 second. I always ask the question, if you're banning my book, I can find 3 of yours to say the same thing that's still on the shelf. And I know that's a tit for tat back and forth, but those are those are cognitive arguments. Sometimes we don't have that crucial conversation where we do not challenge the opposition. So when we look at those things, yes, the legislative, the school board, we have many aspects of the political side. But where these actual conversations come up with is around somebody's kitchen table in somebody's little hole in the world, in their little city, and then they get together and bear ownership, and they go out and present these things, and here we are. So our communities have to do the same thing. We have to get together and understand that, okay, if these books are being banned, what books are out there to say the same thing in a different language? It's the same fight over and over again. We are not going to be set aside, and that's what society looks like they're trying to do. But once again, we have to get in the fight, we have to get engaged, we have to build ownership, and we have to be willing to say that's unacceptable in our community. So I'm not going to let you represent me if you do not fit in the box that I'm in. I have to live by a certain group of rules, and I'm willing to do that, but you also need to serve me under a group of rules that make sense to me and my community.
Ooh, all right. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. All right, so we did have a few other kind of comments in the question and answer portion. Marcos says that the Black fraternities and sororities are struggling at NAU and Flagstaff. So if anybody is up north or a part of the D9 and looking to do some service up north, it sounds like they're struggling up there.
So I will be up in Flagstaff as soon as the weather breaks, because I need to get up there with the branches up there anyway, and I will be stopping by because I've heard that argument, so we're gonna get that taken care of.
Okay, and there is a name in the question and answer portion as well that might be useful for you to reach out to. CEO Hamilton?
I was just gonna say, let the bishop know. Let me know when it breaks, because maybe we can carpool.
All right. Okay. So we do have time for one more question, and then we'll go ahead and start our wrap ups. So the last question that I want to ask all of you is, what are the strengths of the community and how are they leveraged in the current climate? The African American community specifically.
I would say our creativity and that we're innovative. I think we're creative. We make a lot with a little, and that's something that we've always done. That's, you know, our ancestors have something we brought down from our ancestors. But yeah, I think that's what we do have on our side. We have technology, we have innovation. I know Kiana mentioned the AI and ChatGPT. I mentioned digital activism. So those kind of things I think are on our side. And we also have more access to information than ever before because of the internet. So those are some strengths that I would say. And there's more, but
I would say leadership. I mean, more than ever, with the odds stacked against us, I see people leading from the front, not from behind, not from beside, but living, you know, it's a double-edged sword in some ways because it's leadership and not necessarily, as Bishop talked to, not competition, but just stepping up and being resilient in the face of all of this adversity. And also we have people, when you say innovative and creative, changing the narrative. And one of the things that I often chuckle at is I was at a board meeting and I have a fellow colleague, and one of the things that we do, especially during Black History Month, and when people are starting to roll their eyes and act all crazy, said, you know what, it's good to take a break to not talk about all this white on white crime and all of this white on white hate and all of these different things, and you know, so we can talk about beautiful Black history. So I said being really intentional about how every day, in the spirit of thinking about Dr. Peyton, being unapologetically Black and proud and inserting our Black history every minute we get.
I agree. I was actually going to bring up the resiliency because I think as a community, when we do unite together and we do have our shared common purpose and we do work towards whatever the goal is, we can accomplish so much. And I think the resiliency can, you know, comes from our ancestors and those that came before us. But when we unite together, we are a driving force in the community. So if we can continue to be resilient, because some of the fights that we have before us need that resiliency, because we're going to have to keep pushing to get what we want, to fight against the DEI and to fight against legislation that doesn't have our best interest at heart. So I think we have to make sure that we just continue to be resilient in the face of adversity.
Any others want to contribute to the question?
Definitely, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Everyone's saying, I'm enjoying the panelists and all the knowledge that's here. So want to say ditto to a lot of things that the folks are saying in reference to the strengths of the community. I mean, we just know that, you know, all leaders aren't elected, all leaders aren't appointed. You know, your parents, your family members, your your bishops, your pastors, they're leaders, right? And so we're able to tap into different folks that have knowledge. And what you don't know, you can go to them and ask to get those facts as we're talking about. So our community is rich with knowledgeable people, regardless if they're from academia or if, or if they're elected and appointed, as I said. The point is that we definitely have each other to tap into. We might be spread, we might be, in different parts of the state, but we know definitely that we need to reach out and go to people to work to partner and collaborate the best we can. So always open for suggestions, always open for that time, that listening time.
And I think all the points that everyone has made, the resiliency, the innovation, it all I think has made, especially our young adults, the most educated population in our in our history. And along with that education means that we're finding more and more African Americans in spaces that aren't traditionally thought of as spaces that African Americans go to. And that means that we're making our mark in little ways, little things, little places, but we're making our mark. Outside of the box, I think that many 2024, many think that where we should be staying. I can't believe in 2024, we're still having first chief of staff, Black chief of staff, first Black policy director, but we're making our mark. And it's because of our experiences, our lived experiences, our educational experiences, our ancestors that have come before us, because of the strength and resiliency of our families, our parents, our grandparents. We're doing it, and no one can take that from us. And we're going to continue to do it. So I applaud all of us. I mean, this is just beautiful.
Wonderful. I think that's a good spot for us to go ahead and move into the next section of the ending section of our webinar. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much for everyone's contributions, to our panelists, to our attendees who have been very active in the question and answer box. This has been so empowering to me, especially. So let's go ahead and do a round of final thoughts for our panelists. A parting word, something you want to leave the attendees with.
I'll go. What I would like to say first, this is a remarkable panel, and I learned a lot, and I enjoyed talking with each and every one of you. What I will say is that I'm very optimistic about the future of Black Arizona. For the people in this room or on this panel right now, I think a lot of us are doing fantastic work. I'm also thankful for all the Arizona, transplants, so the people that came from other places, because I do think that you all bring more culture, more Blackness, more things like that to Arizona. And I agree that if we can just reach out and work together and be a solidified community, that we can get more great things done. Lastly, if you ever have any questions, you need any information about elections, if you want to run for office, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Again, that is azcleanelections.gov. And it's been a pleasure to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
So I will say I am honored to be here. I'm going to put something up if I could actually get it. It's not working out. Nope. I want to not leave this space without advertising, and this is an advertisement to Twin Flames, George Floyd uprising from Minneapolis to Phoenix Memorial. And why I think that's very befitting. It speaks to that community and civic engagement, where you had a community of led, first women led, but men coming and surrounding to preserve that memorial and actually have restored and preserved 10,000 pieces. We don't have the 10,000 pieces here in Arizona, but we have just very remarkable pieces, and we know only 1% of all Black art is all art that's in galleries is Black art and curated by us. And this is one of 0.1% that's actually a collective space where Black Americans has actually curated it. So that's going to be there February 3rd to July 28th. And in this type of environment where there's so much political upheaval and unrest, it is remarkable to have that memorial there. It's free to the public. It's a healing space, as well as speak to why we stay in this justice work and part of the reasons why we do the things that we do. And again, I am honored to be here today. I actually learned a lot, took a lot of notes, actually have some questions of my own that I will bring forward. And it's just a pleasure and just always my greatest desire to be of service and also continue learning and being with our people and uplifting us all. So to whom much is given, much is required. So I speak health to everybody that's in this circle, because there's a lot that comes with the work that we do. So health and wellness to everyone who's here.
And I want to piggyback on that and just say how amazing that exhibition is. That I went to the George Floyd Twin Flames exhibit on opening night, and it was amazing and it was impactful, and it was a lot to take in. So I would really encourage anyone to go ahead and see that while it's still at the ASU Art Museum. To Kiana's point, the ASU Art Museum is free and open to the public, so there's no cost to get in, but there is an amazing energy to that space. And there is actually even art that was done by George Floyd's daughter that is highlighted there. And it just gives reason and purpose to the work that we do here in the civic engagement, political engagement space. Thank you to the Pastor Center for having me today. I really enjoyed being on this panel with all of these other just well-esteemed professionals and leaders in the space. And so thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
I'll jump on and give my closing words. I'm encouraged. I'm definitely optimistic and encouraged, like Avery mentioned, to know that we're moving forward in Arizona. We're gaining momentum on our elected leaders and at all levels of involvement. So I'm encouraged to continue to support and do all that I can here in the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. With that being said, as Tracy mentioned earlier, I would love to see more folks applying for our councils and commissions. And that's at goyff.az.gov. If you visit our website, you can see the different councils, the 9 councils and commissions that my office oversees for Governor Hobbs. In addition to that, our Governor's Youth Commission. I haven't spoken a lot about that commission, but currently that commission is represented 14 of the 15 counties, at least 2 members. Youth leaders are involved, several more in Maricopa and Pima, but the demographic makeup of that commission at this point has been astounding. I look at that group and I just smile, because yes, those young men and women look like me. We have a good representation of Black and Brown on that commission, and we just want to reach with this next year all 15 counties. So definitely my push is for interest of our boards and commission. But thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you so much, Mr. Olivas, for the invitation. I'm humbled.
Yes, and again, as Tanya stated, thank you, Tiffany and Mr. Olivas and the Pastor Center. This has really been a great opportunity. Tanya's always on me. I'm not really one to speak up much, so I came into this kicking and screaming a little bit, but I've enjoyed this. As Tanya said, I'm very encouraged. I look at our young adults like Avery and Ashley, and I know that we're in good hands because of the work that they're doing. Those of us that are on the other side of that 50 or that 40, let's start with the 40. We put in the work. We'll continue to put in the work but we're here to support you. I encourage anyone, if they're interested in anything that we're doing here in the governor's office, to please feel free to reach out to me, Lopes, TLOPES @az.gov. And then boards and commissions, if you're interested in them, let me know what board and commission that you're interested in. And then the applications, to submit an application is at bc.azgovernor.gov. But let me know if you submit an application so that I can flag it and get working on that process. We have a lot of vacancies that I'm really trying to fill with some Black and brown faces. So don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you. This has been amazing.
All right, you never give a preacher the last word, but I'm going to make it quick. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Tiffany, for the invite. It is humbling to be able to sit before great people and do great things, and know that we all are on the same battlefield fighting the same fight. And I know together we will win successfully. Like everyone else has said, if you have a desire to get really engaged in civil activities, your youth, please contact us at admin@aznacp.org. We have a ton of committees that we are looking to fill. We have a lot of work, especially for our young people. My hair is gray now, and I look back when I was pretty Ricky. Now I'm just old man winter. So I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want some young folks to come in. I started doing this when I was 8 years old. I'm 59 years old now. So I love this fight, and I believe in this fight. I believe in our people. I know that we will succeed. We've been succeeding. And every time there is something that looks like it's going to shut us down, we find the will to fight some more. So I'm going to leave you with this encouragement. The wall has to be rebuilt, and the wall is going to be rebuilt. But remember this, there's always a Sanballat and Tobiah in your field. There's always going to be a naysayer somewhere around you. Some of those naysayers are going to look just like you, and they are going to be the ones that's going to be the most aggravating. But stay on the wall, because we will get this wall built and we will get this work done. So then all people will know who we serve and who we stand with. So at the end of this conversation, the Bible tells us, after you have suffered a little while, and our people have been suffering, and people say it's been a long time. It says, but after you've suffered a little while, the God of grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will strengthen, restore, and confirm you, and will establish you. In other words, the work we do will not go in vain. After we've done this, and we've sweat, and we've cried, and we've prayed, and we've suffered, God is not forgot. He knows his people, and he knows what we're doing. So I encourage you all today. I encourage everyone that's listening. I encourage you, everyone that's talking, and every leader on this channel, stay on the wall. We will get this wall built. We will get this work, and God will keep us safe, and we will prevail. Justice is in our wheelhouse. And because God showed us to do this, chose us to do this, we shall be victorious. Thank you all.
Woo! How do you go after that? Thank you so much, Bishop. And I think that it's important that we honor our community and honor the strengths of the Black community. And faith is one that has kept us going for a very, very long time. So, and will continue to keep us going as we continue to not only address the challenges of our community, but highlight those strengths and nurture those things in us that are going to continue to push us forward. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your participation in this event. We do have an exit survey. It is an anonymous survey. We just want to gather some information from those who've attended, the panelists as well. If you can, just contribute to it. It's not very long. But we did want to just capture some takeaways. It is anonymous. If you want it to be anonymous, there is a question at the end where you can identify yourself if you want to mentor some students. We here in the Pastor Center support a lot of students. We have several different scholarship programs and mentoring programs that we support our students with. And so if you want to be a part of that and mentor some of our students, we would really, really appreciate that. So before we move forward, I'm going to also, I want to thank my staff behind the scenes. Caitlin and Chris have been doing all of this heavy work behind the scenes, spotlighting everyone and making sure that we are running well. So if everyone can come on camera, we are going to go ahead and take a screenshot for the records, because if there was no picture, it did happen. We're recording this. Never mind. However, let's go ahead and get this screenshot in. Okay, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Alberto, did you have any final words you wanted to share with the group?
I'm just so grateful for the wisdom of this panel and your generosity of time and thought and inspiration. And I wanted to share a quote. I just put it in the chat from Fannie Lou Hamer, an endlessly inspiring champion of the civil rights era, who said, you can pray until you faint, but unless you get up and try to do something, God is not going to put it in your lap. That's very similar to one of Congressman Ed Pastor's famous quotes, which is, you can if you get off your can. So basically, it just boils down to start somewhere. And I think what's important about that quote is all of us, wherever we're at in life, have something we can contribute to the cause. I've been working in the field of elections and voter engagement for almost 30 years. And one of the things I always say that I've learned from all this time is that an active voter is the end result of a civically engaged community member, someone that's really connected and informed in their communities. And so I don't think it's surprising that so many of what the panelists talked about today was about how to create community, how to reestablish those ties and keep each other informed and inspired. And all of us have something we can do towards that end. So thank you all so much for your wisdom and just for these really inspiring conversations. And I hope this will continue long into the future. Thanks for the attendees for your attention and your encouragement. And we hope to keep you engaged as we continue to do this series for many years to come. And thanks especially for Tiffany for the lion's share of blood, sweat, and tears that went into pulling the day together. Really, really couldn't have done it without her. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks, Chris and Caitlin.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being our first Diversifying Political Engagement webinar. It was amazing and extremely impactful. And we will see all of our panelists next Friday for lunch.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, y'all.
Be safe out there, everybody.
Have a great day. All right. Bye.